This is an emergency transmission. Citizens of the world, please, make no mistake. The zombie apocalypse is near. Will you cower and hide, or join us and fight? We are Dezombified. So stay on point and watch your six.
All right, looks like we are live. I see Gemma on the screen. I don't see me. Welcome in, everybody. See who we've got with us. Hopefully you can hear me okay. There I am. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. Otherwise, I'm just yapping away here. See who we got. Pam Smith, Dezombified's in the chat, of course. Nick Y. Terry Brown. That's downtown Terry Brown. Some people call him the Cincinnati Kid. So mean, he once shot a man just for snoring. Blue Heron. Let's see who else we got here. Laura Stevens. Hey, Laura, how you doing? Good to see you here. Thank you for coming. Chris Jarvis. Took a busy day, time out from his busy day over to Gerbil Farm. Come and hang out with us. Oh, Loco Nightmare. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for the pancakes there. Looks like Gemma Jade's in the chat. And I think we're caught up chat-wise. Go ahead and bring the other half of the show in. Gemma, you doing okay?
Excuse me, I am doing well. So happy to see everybody. I'm going to run down. I see... Who do I see in here? I see my boy, Nick Y. Thanks so much for joining us, sweetie poo. Pam Smith, Dezombified. Hello. Thank you so much for having us. Terry Brown, what's up? I don't think I've seen you in a while. Yeah, it takes me a little while to get ready, guys. You know, blame it on me. But we're fashionably late. You know how it goes. Blue Heron, so awesome to see you as well. Laura Stevens. Again, everybody, I just really appreciate all of you. My cookie. El Loco Nightmare. What is up? Bansheba. I was going to get there. I was going down the list.
To visit you, Bansheba. She's in Deadwood, and she's asked us to come and hang out with her and do some paranormal stuff. So that's on our list when we get our road show going. Just wanted to interject that there. Sorry to talk over you, but I was excited.
Gosh, Steve. Why you got to interrupt me? Missy Lewis, how you doing? Bansheba, we are definitely coming to visit you. Listen, girl, I will come visit you by myself if Steve doesn't want to come. Deadwood, what?
I'm all over it. I'll get tomorrow.
Did we talk yet about, we're just going to surprise you guys each week with what state we're doing. And tonight, Steve, would you like to bring us in? And I'm going to tell the first real evil story.
Yeah, well, we decided, for this season, since they're 13 episodes in a season, the way we're doing it, we do the 13 original colonies, things that have happened there, the most infamous murders, real evil with all those. Last week we did New Jersey, and this week we're going to hop over the border just a little bit, cross the bridge, and go into New York. New York, not just New York City, but New York State in general. Lots of bad guys and things there. And I guess, did we want to go ahead and just start? Me take the first one and you go after that?
Cool. I just wanted to say, Dezombified, I really like the new banner going across the screen, Real Evil with Steve Stockton and Gemma Jade. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. I just saw that.
I like the little town background. I'm going to change my avatar when I have a minute. But all right, so we're starting off, the 10 most evil, either murderers or, murderers, I guess. Most infamous, most evil. And I'm doing him first kind of as the last one because, I don't know, I know a lot of people who were friends with this guy, who knew him well, who knew his children. It was a bit before my time, but a lot of people will tell you that they were extremely surprised that he was so incredibly evil. We're talking anywhere from 6 to 100. Richard the Iceman Kuklinski, who of course was actually from New Jersey, but he did most of his killing in New York. By all accounts, he's an extremely accomplished murderer, if you can be an accomplished murderer, right? He was an Italian mob contract killer, and his nickname was the Iceman because he froze the bodies of his victims in an industrial cooler in order to hide the time of their murder. So the time of death couldn't be determined. This is one of like the alleged origins of how he got his nickname. Nobody knows if it's true. He loved reveling in telling all different stories about how he got that nickname. He told others that he, helped kill Jimmy Hoffa, but then he said that he didn't. A lot of people said that it was just that he had no emotion. He had no feeling. He was thorough. He was extremely intelligent. He once accidentally killed a man, but still took the precaution of getting rid of the guy's fingers, removing all of his teeth by hand, ensuring that when he disposed of the body, the man would never be able to be identified. All told, he killed between 6 and 100 people between 1949 and 1986. And although he appears to have been the kind of man who would exaggerate a lot of the tales of his willingness to murder for as little as someone making him feel bad about something, like making him feel bad about himself or making him feel guilty about something, remorseful, they're pretty ubiquitous. Murdering his first victim at age 13, he's been described by New York authorities as one of the most dangerous criminals in the state's entire history. I recently watched a documentary about him, and I don't know. Like, I think, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to marry a mobster while everyone else had pictures of these teeny boppers on their wall at 11, 12 years old. I had pictures of Al Capone and, other mobsters and gangsters. So, Bonnie and Clyde, all of them. So to me, he's kind of like, and I don't mean any disrespect to the victims. I'm just saying, and I guess you can say this is how we kind of romanticize these kinds of things in our culture, but he is real evil because he killed between 6 and 100 people. His first murder took place at 13, but he went home to his family. His wife and daughters had no idea that he was a murderer. A lot of the people around him didn't even know because he was such a nice, affable kind of guy. At least that was the facade that he gave off. Take it away, Steve.
All right, just want to say hi to Callie Snyder there. That's one of my regular viewers
Callie.
Over on 13 past midnight. Callie is in Hawaii, as you might have guessed by the name, but it's 3 hours earlier there. But thanks for joining us here, Callie. Good to see you. Glad to have you with us. And Missy Lewis, I don't think I said hi to you. Let's see what I've got here. Where did I put it? Sorry, I switched out to look at something else, and everything went bye-bye. Still experiencing a little bit of Mercury in retrograde, I think. Lizzie Halliday. She was known as New York's first female serial killer. Now, this is in the 1890s. I mean, you don't really think about it, hear about serial killers back then, unless it's, Jack the Ripper or somebody like that. She was also had the ubiquitous distinction there of being the first woman to ever be sentenced to death by the electric chair, although that sentence was never carried out. Now, Lizzie, although if you look at the picture, the drawing over here, it looks like they may have already electrocuted her. Lizzie immigrated to the States as a child. As she got older, she showed a propensity for what would later be called spells of insanity. She committed at least 4 murders, including those of 2 women she was old friends with, and her 6th husband, who she stabbed, shot, and mutilated. Yes, said her 6th husband. Of the previous 5, she is suspected of killing at least 2 and attempting to kill 1 other with arsenic. And she also had a love of burning things, a little pyromania there. In 1888, she burned down the saloon of the 2 old friends that she would later murder. She also burned both the barn and the house of her 6th husband, who she would later murder. She's just not a good person all around. Apprehended and sentenced to death by electrocution, the governor of New York, for whatever reason, commuted her sentence and instead institutionalized her, it's easy for me to say, for being mentally insane. She went to the Mattawan State Hospital for the criminally insane, where she would live out the rest of her life. While there, she attacked and killed a nurse, stabbing her 200 times with a pair of scissors. So that's Lizzie Halliday, New York's first known female serial killer. Kind of short and not so sweet there, but piece of work.
A bit of a Black Widow then, huh?
Well, yeah, killed the husbands, and if she killed 2 or 3 of them, she probably was responsible for the others too. They just couldn't pin it on her. They probably weren't able to prove it. Dezombified said that's cold when I was speaking about or talking about the Iceman, and I giggled. I almost choked on my Red Bull. Yeah, I didn't think about that part about him keeping his bodies on ice. I always just thought he was the Iceman because he had like ice water in his veins. Right, and the no emotion, the lack of emotion, the lack of remorse. Yeah. Klinsky watched his father kill his younger brother, said Cowie Snyder. I did not know that. We don't really go too in depth on these. I wanted to start a series on serial killers, either just for my patrons or just in general. But I have so much going on. It's probably not going to be until next year. But speaking of serial killers, I never like to say my favorite serial killer because I think that just sounds horrific. But in this community, I think we all have some serial killers that we're just more interested in than others. And I always say I'll never be able to speak to Ted Bundy and pick his brain and write to him. So the most interesting serial killer that's still alive for me is actually on our list as well. And that is Joel David Rifkin. I just think he is absolutely fascinating. Kemper is right below him for me on my list of who I would love to speak to. I would love to get a P.O. box and of course a fake name and write to Joel Rifkin. He was so intelligent. So this is another guy who preyed solely on women. He's responsible for the murder and in some cases even the dismemberment of 17 women that he claimed were sex workers. He was the most prolific serial killer in New York's entire 20th century history. He came from a fairly normal background, though, but as I said, he was above average intelligence. People say about his life that he was teased heavily in school. He did not perform well despite his higher than average intelligence. And this is when he began having fantasies of killing women. He was fantasizing about killing the girls, the young ladies who were making fun of him. And it just kind of progressed from there. Later on, when he was out of school, he was unable to hold down a job. Outcast, loner, right? Having these crazy fantasies. I'm sure it would be hard. He probably had some other, oh my gosh, a mosquito just fell out of my hair. Sorry, it was like a ladybug. Ouch. So anyway, did you guys see that? Okay. So a lot of people with above average intelligence, they either do super duper well or they're very socially awkward like Joel Rifkin was. At some point, he began soliciting prostitutes, but at the same time, he developed a fascination with serial killers who murdered prostitutes themselves. And he even went so far as to collect newspaper clippings on the topic. In 1989 and 1990, Rifkin finally began making news of his own by murdering 2 women whose bodies he then dismembered and threw into the canals in Manhattan. Their remains were never discovered. In 91, Rifkin stepped up his activities, and over the next 2 years, he killed 15 women. And the usual way he disposed of their bodies was in a container of some kind, which he then threw into a body of water. He was finally caught during a routine traffic stop where officers attempted to pull him over for not displaying tags, right? Like his plate wasn't showing or was obstructed in some way. He didn't stop. And it wasn't until he missed a turn and wrecked that officers discovered he was towing the body of his latest victim, and he was taking it to be dumped somewhere. He was imprisoned and he's eligible for parole in 2197, which obviously he will be deceased at that time. Dude got pulled over with an actual body in his car.
I always wondered, like, these serial killers, they get so brazen after just disposing of bodies. I think Lisk is fascinating. I can't wait for him to be caught. But I mean, I always wondered, like, did anyone ever get caught? And here's Rifkin. He got caught with a body, caught red-handed, caught with his hand in the cookie jar.
And just, I think they get that sometimes. They get that overconfidence, and that's usually how they end up getting caught. But that's just unbelievable. You know, they would have a body in his car and then still be doing something like driving with no tags or something that's going to be a dead giveaway. It's going to get pulled over. So interesting. Let me see what we've got here coming up next. And are you sure that was a ladybug? I think it looked like one of the Fae.
It could have been.
Looked like a little Tinkerbell. That
it did. I couldn't. At first, I thought it was a mosquito because it was itching me. But then I looked at it, and it looked like it actually had wings. Gemma, did you see the Lisk doc on? I think I've seen every single one of them. It's literally the first thing I go for is anything about Lisk, because I'm absolutely fascinated with that case as well, as someone who maybe could have ended up a victim had those murders or killings started taking place a few years later. That's why it fascinates me.
No. Next on the list here, described by some completely oblivious individual as a devoted mother, Schenectady, New York resident Mary Beth Tinning is suspected of being a serial child murderer. But a little bit of variation here. Unlike many of the other cases of child murderers, all these children were her own. From 1975 to 1985, Tinning gave birth to or adopted a total of 9 babies, boys and girls. None of these children lived past their 5th birthday. In fact, most died within a few months of being born. And if you look at her picture, you can tell she's not a happy camper. Tinning was a regular in Schenectady hospital trauma centers, where she would bring her dying offspring in a panic, saying they weren't breathing. Hospitals consistently declared the cause of death as being SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome, but no one ever thought that the 9 dead children from SIDS in one family was a statistical near impossibility. Tinning's ultimate motivation for these murders, according to investigators, was to garner sympathy and attention for herself. They believed that after each baby's death, Tinning got some sort of emotional high from the attention she received. Tinning's 3rd child, Jennifer, died of natural causes, meningitis, just a few days after birth. The first of Tinning's children to die, it seems that the response to Jennifer's death sparked something deeply dark within the mother. She was finally investigated after a call to police from the hospital, where she took her 9th child, 3-month-old Tammy Lynn, after she claimed she found the little baby unconscious in her crib with blood coming out of her mouth. Once arrested, Tinning admitted to the murder and confessed that she'd also been slowly poisoning her husband. Now, despite ample circumstantial evidence in the form of 8 dead children, which, I think you could get a conviction there, she was only charged with the death of Tammy Lynn. She was found guilty and remains in prison, where she has been denied parole 4 times because she continues to, in the words of the parole board, demonstrate no insight into her crime. So she still doesn't think she did anything wrong. They're my kids. I can take them out if I want to. But she's obviously got a few screws loose there, not wired together just right.
Completely narcissistic. No culpability.
Munchausen by proxy type thing there. Very similar to it. But she's frightening to look at. She's got these very dull, very half sleepy lidded eyes, and she looks effing crazy.
Unbelievable.
All right, what you got next for us, Gemma?
I was just thinking, like, of what you just texted me. Like, should we? I don't know how that even happened. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's all good.
The Lonely Hearts Killers. We'll do that next week. So A woman named Martha Beck had quite the terrible upbringing. She was burdened with an overbearing and brutal mother and relentlessly teased in school, as children who are abused usually are as well. Worse than all of that, though, at the age of 10, she had already been sexually assaulted by her own brother right under her mother's nose, and her mother did not care. A man named Raymond Fernandez became Beck's partner in crime. He was a brain-damaged former British intelligence agent who had a pattern of answering Lonely Hearts ads and then filching the women who placed them for everything they were worth. Oh, so he robbed the women who put these ads out, kind of like that guy, John, the Dear John guy. So this was back when you had to like film one of those big videotapes of yourself and like send it in, and then the person would leave you like a voicemail message. Don't ask me how I know how this worked back then. This was a really long time ago. This might have even been in the newspaper, because I thought this happened in the 80s, and it probably did. But in 1947, this happened. Raymond Fernandez answered an ad placed by single mother of two, Martha Beck. She was obsessed with a need for male acceptance, and after spending only a short time with Fernandez, she abandoned both her children, left them in Florida, and she moved to New York to live with him. When he confessed he was a scam artist, and he even said he was a murderer, she wasn't swayed and instead began helping him, posing as his sister to help facilitate his scams. 2 years later, she caught Fernandez in bed with one of his marks. The woman's name was Janet Fay, and Beck smashed her head with a hammer, and Fernandez finished the job by strangling the woman. They then fled back to New York. They fled New York for Michigan, and moved in with a widow and her daughter. Martha Beck's insane temper got the best of her once again, and she shot the widow before later drowning the daughter for crying too much when the mother was shot. Eventually arrested, both were executed in the electric chair in New York in March of 1951. Their last words were of their love for one another, with Raymond Fernandez saying, quote, "I want to shout it out. I love Martha. What do the public know about love?" End of quote. And Martha Beck said, quote, "My story is a love story, but only those tortured by love can know what I mean. Imprisonment in the death house has only strengthened my feeling for Raymond." End of quote. Steve?
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were just pausing there.
Nope.
If you were finished. Let's go ahead and take another one of these that like to self-described angel of mercy, but they're really just an angel of death, or no angel at all, the Grim Reaper, probably. But supposedly suffering from low self-esteem, Richard Angelo should have been one of the good ones. He was an EMT at Good Samaritan Hospital in Long Island, New York. He'd been an Eagle Scout and a volunteer fireman. You know, swell, stand-up kind of guy. His background appeared to show a man who cared deeply about others. But as is the case sometimes with people, especially like this, that go out of their way to virtue signal and show how nice they are, this wasn't the case. Feeling unappreciated in his job as a nurse, Angelo began inducing emergencies at the Good Samaritan. Now, how would he do that? He would inject patients with paralytic agents Pavilon and Anectine so that he could be the one that would save them. Initially, this strategy worked really, really well, and Angelo received the praise he sought from his co-workers and the patients he had saved. However, 25 of the 37 patients Angelo is known to have tried this on did not survive the experience. And what's more, people began to notice a pattern of emergencies during Angelo's shift. It's like he went to the well just a little too often there. Of course, this caused the staff to become suspicious. All came to a head when one patient, saying that Angelo was injecting him with something that he didn't recognize, managed to hit the call button, notifying the nursing staff to his plight. The contents Angelo was emptying to administer were analyzed, and he was later found out. Later, the police discovered that he had taken these same paralyzing agents from the hospital, kept them in his home, and then would smuggle them back in when he just felt a attack coming on, or whatever you want to call it, or a need to be to doctor his self-esteem. And that's what he said when interviewed by the authorities regarding the murders and attempted murders. Angelo claimed that he did it because he suffered from low self-esteem. And quoting here, I wanted to create a situation where I could cause the patient to have some respiratory distress or some problem, and through my intervention or suggested intervention or whatever, come out looking like I knew what I was doing. I had no confidence in myself. I felt very inadequate. He was sentenced to 61 years in prison, where he remains until today. Good place for him, sounds like.
Yeah.
That
So
just makes you wonder, you put your lives literally in these people's hands. If you go to the doctor, you go to the emergency room or whatever. And then what if you run across some cuckoo bird like that, then
that's why I always ask a bajillion questions, especially when I bring my son in there. So we didn't specify New York City or New York State, so I figure we just encompass New York, right?
Yeah.
So I have something that we can talk about. Steve, if you want to check your text, I sent you what we're going to be looking at. I thought it only right if we're talking about New York. How about Amityville, right?
Yeah, might as well. I mean,
I figured we can
previous
do that
part of
one
it
together.
there.
It's pretty long, and like I said, we didn't really specify. We're just doing New York. We got a little.
Yeah.
I'm so confused now. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Amityville murder for a little bit. Let's start with the murderer, Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr., September 26, 1951. So he was a Libra, Nick. He was an American mass murderer who died this year, actually, March 12th. He was tried and convicted for the 1974 killings of his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters in Amityville, Long Island, New York. Condemned to 6 sentences of 25 years to life. He died in custody in 2021. Obviously, this case inspired the book and film versions of Amityville. At around 6:30 p.m. on November 13th, 1974, 23-year-old DeFeo entered Henry's Bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, and declared, "You've got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." DeFeo and a small group of people went to 112 Ocean Avenue, which was located near the bar, and found that DeFeo's parents were dead inside the house. One of the group, DeFeo's friend Joe Yeswit, made an emergency call to the Suffolk County Police Department, who searched the house and found that 6 members of the family were dead in their beds. The victims were Ronald Jr.'s parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr., who was 43, and Louise DeFeo nee Brigante, who was 43. His 4 siblings, Dawn 18, Allison 13, Mark 12, and John Matthew 9. All of the victims had been shot with a 35 caliber lever. Yeah, I can't talk. A 35 caliber lever action Martin 336C rifle around 3 o'clock in the morning of that day. The DeFeo parents had both been shot twice, while the children had all been killed with single shots. Physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo and her daughter Allison were both awake at the time of their deaths. According to Suffolk County Police, the victims were all found lying face down in bed. The DeFeo family had occupied 112 Ocean Avenue since purchasing it in 1965. The 6 victims were later buried in nearby St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. Ronald DeFeo Jr., also known as Butch, was the eldest son of the family and its lone surviving member. He was taken to the local police station for his own protection after suggesting to police officers at the scene that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman, Louis Fellini. However, an interview with the station soon exposed serious inconsistencies in his version of events. The following day, he confessed to carrying out the killings himself, and Fellini, the alleged hitman, had an alibi, proving he was out of state at the time of the killings. DeFeo told detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." He admitted that he had just taken a bath and redressed, and detailed where he had discarded crucial evidence such as bloodstained clothes and the Marlin rifle and cartridges before going to work as usual. Steve, before you get into the trial and conviction, do you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a break. We're actually a little late for one. So everybody hang out, get up and stretch, go take a pee, whatever you need to do.
Hey,
But
realities.
watch this message from our sponsors. Buy some merchandise. And it looks like we're back. Hope everybody enjoyed that little break there. Before we went to that break, we were talking about bad guy Ronald DeFeo Jr., Butch DeFeo, the original start of the Amityville horror there, where he killed his own family, or appears to have. And there was several different stories there. One that his sister Dawn and an unknown individual had done the killings, and he managed to get away. And I think the thing, Jim, and you can back me up on this or maybe have a different opinion, but the thing that sticks out to me as the strangest about all of it was that nobody tried to flee. I mean, the parents...
It seemed like nobody woke up.
So I'm wondering if they'd been drugged. Did they ever do toxicology on those people? Do you know?
I don't think so, just because back then they didn't automatically do toxicology. I mean, I'm not saying definitely not, but I don't think so because it was so obvious how they died, it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
And because he ended up confessing, so I don't think that they went through the trouble of doing that.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that. Now, one of the little brothers was injured, I think playing football or something, and they said he would have been the only one that might have had any trouble getting away. But the rest of them, I think because he supposedly shotgunned the parents first, whichever one he shot first, the other didn't appear to even try to get up and get away.
Exactly, or do something. I do still feel like something evil was in that house, whether he came out and said it was all something concocted or what. I believe the most recent interview with him, not to cut you off, Steve, and I'll let you get right back to it, but the most recent interview I saw with him right before he died, which took place at the end of 2020, from some documentary I was watching, I think it was about Ed and Lorraine Warren, he said that he was sitting in the basement and he was staring at the wall and a dark figure came out and handed him the gun. Do I believe a dark figure can hand you a gun? No, but I believe that it can put it in your head to go and get a gun. And I still think there's something devastatingly evil in that house. I'll never not believe it.
Yeah, I agree. And I've even heard theories that it goes back to Native American tribes, that can't remember what tribe was in that area, maybe the Algonquin, one of those New England tribes, that they didn't like that area. And they said that the land was sour or spoiled or whatever, and they avoided the place. So it could be an ancient Native American curse or something on there that's just carried on. But yeah, getting into the trial and conviction there.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yep. 15 tests were done on the victims. All came back that they were indeed drugged.
Oh, okay.
While you're reading that, I'm going to look that up. Before. Thanks, Nick.
Okay. The trial and conviction. DeFeo's trial began on October 14th, 1975. He and his defense lawyer, William Weber, mounted an affirmative defense of insanity, with DeFeo claiming that he killed his family in self-defense because he heard their voices plotting against him. This insanity plea was supported by the psychiatrist for the defense, Daniel Schwartz. The psychiatrist for the prosecution, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that, although DeFeo was a regular user of heroin and LSD, he also had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of the crime. On November 21st, 1975, DeFeo was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. On December 4th, 1975, Judge Thomas Stark sentenced DeFeo to 6 sentences of 25 years to life. And DeFeo was held at the Sullivan Correctional Facility in the town of Fallsburg, New York, until his death. And all of his appeals and requests to the parole board had, of course, been denied.
So I'm looking this up, and I guess it depends where you look, because I'm reading right now. It says the coroner said that he did extensive toxicology on every single victim, and none of them had anything in their system. But one of the former Amityville police chiefs said he was one of the first people at the scene. He said he finds it hard to believe that DeFeo could have committed the shootings without any members of his family waking, like we just said. He said, quote, "Why someone wasn't able to get out of that house is beyond belief," end of quote. What made this particularly inexplicable was the locations of the 6 bodies strongly suggested DeFeo could not have committed the shooting so rapidly that nobody had time to react at all.
And continuing with what I have here, it says all 6 of the victims were found face down in their beds with no signs of a struggle. The police investigation concluded that the rifle had not been fitted with a sound suppressor or silencer, and found, although it does say here in the Wikipedia article that they found evidence of sedatives having been administered. But I don't know. I've never seen anything conclusive about that. DeFeo supposedly admitted during his interrogation that he had drugged his family. However, here we go. The autopsy report indicated otherwise per the doctor, and that was what you said there. Quoting the doctor that did the autopsy. We did extensive toxicology, not only on the blood and urine, but on all the organs that we removed, and it turned up 0. There wasn't anything in their bodies. Neighbors did not report hearing any gunshots being fired, which is unusual because if you've seen the neighborhood, those houses are close together. You could hear a hunting rifle. And those who were awake at the time of the murders, the only thing they remember hearing was the family's sheepdog, Shaggy, barking. And just
let me know when you're finished.
You want to go ahead and pick up there in controversies where it's
Yeah, I just have one thing here. It says, in fact, DeFeo had fired a total of 8 ear-shredding shots, estimated to be 140 decibels each, in 4 different rooms of the sprawling house across 2 different floors, and nobody was disturbed, like you said, including the neighbors. Even if they were sleeping, the report of the weapon that was used is supposed to be so loud that it would have, so to speak, awakened the dead. So, yeah, that's really crazy. Where did you leave off on? I'm sorry, because I was looking
controversies, like the 3rd paragraph there.
Yep.
2nd paragraph.
Mm-hmm. Controversies. All 6 of the victims were found. Oh, I'm sorry. 2nd paragraph.
Yeah.
DeFeo had a volatile relationship with his father, but the motive for the killings remains unclear. He asked police what he had to do in order to collect his father's life insurance, which prompted the prosecution to suggest at trial that his motive was to collect on the life insurance policies of both his parents. After his conviction, DeFeo gave several varying accounts of how the killings were carried out. In a 1986 interview for Newsday, DeFeo claimed his sister Dawn killed their father, and then their distraught mother killed all of his siblings, apparently with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, before he killed his mother. He stated that he took the blame because he was afraid to say anything negative about his mother to her father, Michael Brigante Sr., and his father's uncle, out of fear that they would kill him. His father's uncle was Peter DeFeo, a Capro regime in the Genovese crime family. In this interview, DeFeo also asserted he was married at the time of the murders to a woman named Geraldine Gates, with whom he was living in New Jersey, and that his mother phoned to ask him to return to Amityville to break up a fight between Dawn and her father. Subsequently, he drove to Amityville with Geraldine's brother, Richard Raimondo, who was with him at the time of the murders and could verify his story completely. In 1990, DeFeo filed a 440 motion, a proceeding to have his conviction vacated. In support of his motion, DeFeo asserted that Dawn and an unknown assailant who fled the house before he could get a good look at him killed their parents, and Dawn subsequently killed their siblings. He said the only person he killed was Dawn, and that it was by accident as they struggled over the rifle. Again, he asserted he was married to Geraldine and that her brother was with him at the time of the murders. Steve, can you pick up, please? I got a little visitor in here.
Yeah. In 1990, DeFeo filed a 440 motion, a proceeding to have his conviction vacated. In support of his motion, DeFeo asserted that Dawn was an unknown assailant who fled the house before he could get a good look at him, killed their parents, and Dawn subsequently killed their siblings. He said the only person he killed was Dawn, and that it was by accident as they struggled over the rifle. Again, he asserted he was married to Geraldine and her brother, and that her brother was with him at the time of the murders. An affidavit from Richard Raimondo was submitted to the court, and it was asserted he could not be located to testify in person. Evidence was submitted to the court by Suffolk County District Attorney's Office suggesting that Raimondo did not exist and that Geraldine Gates was living in upstate New York, married to someone else at the time of the murders. Geraldine Gates did not testify at this hearing because the authorities had already confronted her about the false claims, and in 1992 secured a statement under oath where she admitted Raimondo was fictitious and that she did not actually marry DeFeo until 1989 in anticipation of the filing of the 440 motion. So, Judge Stark denied the motion, writing, quote, I find the testimony of the defendant overall to be false and fabricated. His testimony that during the fall of 1974 he was married and lived with his wife and child at Long Branch, New Jersey is incredible and not worthy of belief. He produced no corroborating evidence in this regard. Another reason for my disbelief of defendant's testimony is demonstrated by consideration of several portions of the trial testimony. He signed a lengthy written statement describing in detail his activities. In the statement, he said he lived with his family at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville and that he worked for his father, that he usually went to and from work with his father, that he was ill and stayed home from work on November 12, 1974, that he was on probation for having stolen an outboard engine and had an appointment to see his probation officer in Amityville that very afternoon. His girlfriend, Mindy Weiss, testified that she began dating the defendant in June of 74 and was with him so frequently that summer and fall. Stark further declared defendant's testimony that he did not shoot and kill the members of his family is likewise incredible and not worthy of belief.
I'm back.
Okay, if you want to take over there, the next paragraph.
Sorry about that, guys. My 3-year-old is absolutely in love with all of my technology here. On November 30th, 2000, DeFeo met with Rick Osuna, the author of The Night the DeFeos Died, which was published in 2002. I want to read that book. According to Osuna, they spoke for about 6 hours. However, in a letter to the radio show host Lou Gentile, DeFeo denied giving Rick Osuna information that could be used in his book, claiming that he immediately left the interview and did not speak to Osuna about anything substantive. According to Osuna, DeFeo claimed that he had committed the murders with his sister Dawn and 2 friends, Augie DeGennaro and Bobby Kelsky, out of desperation because his parents had plotted to kill him. Allegedly, DeFeo claimed that after a furious row with his father, he and his sister planned to kill their parents and that Dawn murdered the children in order to eliminate them as witnesses. He said that he was enraged on discovering his sister's action, knocked her unconscious on her bed, and shot her in the head. Police found traces of unburned gunpowder on Dawn's nightgown, which DeFeo proponents allege proves she discharged a firearm. However, at trial, the ballistics expert Alfred Della Penna testified that unburned gunpowder is discharged through the muzzle of a weapon, indicating that she was in proximity to the muzzle of the weapon when it was discharged and not that she fired the weapon. He reiterated this on an A&E Amityville documentary that is extensively discussed in Will Saviv's Mentally Ill in Amityville. Saviv had an expert evaluate Della Pena's assessment, and the expert confirmed that he was correct. Moreover, the medical examiner found nothing to indicate that Dawn had been in a struggle. The bullet wound was the only fresh mark on her body. Joe Nickel notes that given the frequency with which DeFeo has changed his story over the years, any new claims from him regarding the events that took place on the night of the murder should be approached with caution. Most of the claims made in Rick Osuna's book are sourced to DeFeo's ex-wife, Geraldine Gates. While in the 1986 interview with Newsday, she asserted she married DeFeo in 1974. In Osuna's book, she alleges they married in 1970. Their 1993 divorce case says that they met in 1985, married in 1989, and divorced in 1993. Rick Osuna's book was adapted into a docudrama titled Shattered Hopes, The True Story of the Amityville Horrors. The film, released on December 16, 2011, was written, directed, and produced by Ryan Katzenbach, and featuring narration by veteran actor Ed Asner, examines all aspects of the Amityville case with a strong focus on the DeFeo family and the events surrounding their murders. DeFeo died on March 12, 2021 at the Albany Medical Center. Official cause of death is yet to be determined. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor or expert on this in any way, shape, or form, it's just my opinion that Ronald DeFeo may have had some mental illness going on there.
Yeah, there's a really good book called The Devil I Know by a lady named Jackie Barrett, who's a psychic. And she started getting like these messages from DeFeo, like over a long distance. She actually went to him and started talking to him and wrote a book about it. I'll lend you my copy if you'd like to read it. But it's fascinating from that angle, from a demonology angle. But there was definitely something going on there, whether demonic or not, and just mental illness and a little bit of everything. There were just too many strange things, and nobody had the same story twice. Nobody had a straight story.
I believe that demonic entities go, I always say, towards weaker people like children, or they will prey on someone with a lot of anger or someone who is mentally ill. I found this little article, just 10 or 9 creepy facts about Amityville, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but one of them says, and we just talked about this, so we're not the only ones. The DeFeos were all found in the same position. There might have been a second killer who was never caught, but there also might not have been. The jury's still out. His story changed repeatedly, which we also just talked about. He's not technically considered a serial killer. He's a mass murderer, because the FBI definition of a serial murderer is the unlawful killing of 2 or more victims by the same offender in separate events. But the DeFeo murders occurred during the same event, not separate ones. A mass murder, meanwhile, is typically described as a number of murders, 4 or more, occurring during the same incident with no distinctive time period between the murders. And that's what happened on November 13th, 1974. The DeFeo, this one is important. I think in this community, Steve, you'll be able to appreciate why this is important. Mm-hmm. The DeFeo's furniture was reportedly still in the house when the Lutzes moved in.
Yeah, I think I would have gotten rid of the furniture.
Energy stays on objects. Whether the Lutzes' story was, they came out later and said it was made up, whatever. The energy from that murder, Steve, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah,
before we close out?
Again, where you have such a hideous, sudden tragedy like that, with that many people murdered for whatever reason and whatever caused them to do it, I think that energy stays behind. In the Bible, it talks about the blood crying out from the ground. And I think that can cause residual hauntings and active hauntings as well. But that evil is still there, especially if you've got the furniture and the blood stains and things are still there. Maybe that's why they got such a deal on the house, right? And actually, I think it was, even though later it was claimed that even with such a deal they got on it, it was more mortgage than they could handle. And they made up the entire story to break the lease and run away, because they were really there for what, like 32 days or something?
They were there for a little less than a month, I think.
Yeah, maybe it's 28 days. But yeah, I would be cautious in living in some place like that, unless, especially after knowing what had happened there, I'd go in and have it cleansed, have a priest bless it. And that's what they tried. That's what the Lutz family tried, and that's when things really amped up, was after they had the first priest come in. But again, I wouldn't pick just any priest either. I would find somebody that either worked as part of a deliverance ministry or somebody that was very, very knowledgeable in demonology. Because, technically any Catholic priest or any priest, pastor, or preacher can do it. But again, I would want somebody that's done it before, that knows what they're doing, and doesn't just come in and sprinkle holy water, Dominus Ominous, you'll be all right. That type of thing. I want the hardcore guys come in if there's been a murder there like that, especially.
Yeah, right. Get that juju out. So there's number 7 on this list is the famous demonic boy photograph is from the Amityville investigation. So it says Google demonic boy photograph. And this is the image that pops up, and it shows this really creepy image.
You guys know the creepiest picture.
You guys know how scared I am of anything having to do with haunted, possessed, demonic children. It says it's iconic, even if you don't know what it's from, and regardless as to whether you believe in ghosts or demons. If you're at all curious about this kind of stuff, odds are you'll have seen the photo before. It was taken during an investigation by paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Yes, that Ed and Lorraine Warren. Several weeks after the Lutzes left the house. It seems to show a small boy with glowing eyes in the doorway to the left of the frame, even though there were no children in the house at the time of the investigation. It's worth noting that ghost photos are easily faked. Spirit photography has been within the purview of con artists since its beginnings in the early 1860s, when it was discovered that a ghostly effect could be achieved with a simple in-camera technique called double exposure. You don't need Photoshop to convincingly fake a ghost photo. But for folks who believe it's a ghost photo, it's thought to show the spirit of John Matthew DeFeo, who was 9 years old at the time of his death. Other less paranormal explanations include it being an accidentally captured image of a member of the investigation team who was, 9? Or just someone speedy enough to play a good trick. And it says how the haunted house story might have been fabricated. They changed the address of 112 Ocean Avenue and completely redid the house. So yeah, on that note, guys, I just want to say goodnight. I want to say thank you all so much for coming out and hanging out with us. We did something a little bit different this week than we intended to, but we'll be back on Urban Legends next week, and we're still doing the 13 original colonies. We might end up having a couple more episodes because, of course, we're going to have to do the recap. So you never know what you're going to get, but you are definitely going to get Real Evil on Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Dezombified with Stemma. So
it's like a box of chocolates, but with body parts.
Love you all so much. Keep an eye out on my channel. If you are not subscribed already to Gemma Jade, Banshiva and other mods have been putting it in throughout the entire chat, but please go on and subscribe over there. Trying to do big things here, and yeah, check out my channel. Check us out on Friday nights. We do campfire stories. On Sunday nights we do fireside chat. So we do a lot together. We have merch coming out soon. Dezombified, thank you so much for having us, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys have helped me so much get my name out there, and just guys, be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. It can make you feel good. Kindness is like forgiveness, and that it's for the person who's doing it. Smile at a stranger. I'm giving out the B word vibes. The fairy is back, flying in front of my camera. I'll see you guys next time. Next week, I don't know what state we're going to do, but it'll be Urban Legends. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And for me, that's what she said. I do want to congratulate Gemma. Her channel is monetized now.
Yay! Thank you.
I know she was too humble to say anything about it herself. She didn't want to give off that bitch vibe. But we will have that on T-shirts coming up. So if you like to give off your own bitch vibe, we'll have a way that you can
all the insults that I get when people call me names, when people talk crap to me, when people hurt my feelings. You know what? They're just merch ideas. All right, I'm out, guys. Mwah.
Thanks again. And you can join me tonight at midnight on that Pacific time on 13 past midnight, my other channel, for Ghost Stories at midnight. A lot of friggin' midnights going on there. I like midnight, can you tell? And as always, over on Missing Persons and Mysteries, we just put out a video that's going bonkers about park rangers that have gone missing. That's about 25 minutes of creepy bliss there, if you like that sort of thing. And we've got more videos coming out this week. So you can find us all over the place with a lot more coming up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today. Dezombified, thank you guys for setting all this up for us and giving us a place to come and do this show. We love you guys. We love all of you, too. For Jim and myself, be good to yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton. I'll talk to you next time. Good night, everybody. Mwah.
Good night, Puddin'.